So the series I'm started is about our journey home. And what the essence is a homecoming to our spiritual center. It's a finding who and what we are at the deepest level. And this may sound like an oversimplification or something that maybe would even sound kind of ridiculous, because I've lived with myself all these years and I surely know who I am by now. But there's a lot of influences that we have been subjected to from the time we were born that cause us to think of ourselves in a certain way and maybe add things to our belief system that would not naturally come if we were left alone. And religion is one of them. It depends on what religion you were born into, what what approach to God. There are many religions, and whichever one you were born into will undoubtedly dominate your thinking one way or the other, whether you accept it or reject it. If you reject it, you would be saying, my understanding of God is based on this religious narrative I was given. And so what I'm rejecting is the narrative itself. It's not necessarily an understanding of God. It's just maybe I have not explored that question myself. What is God? And what is my relationship to God? I know what the church believes, and I know what I'm expected to believe. But what do I believe? That's what Jesus asked his disciples, who do people say that I am? And they gave a variety of answers, and the main question was, well, who do you say that I am? That was the important question. And it's a question that's really directed to each one of us. Who do we say? Who do I say God is? What is my relationship to God? It has to be a personal thing. To love the Lord your God with all your mind, your heart, your soul is the most important thing that you can do. And what we often do is try to love somebody else's God, to love an interpretation of God. And so we're given a lot of rules and regulations that maybe we've never researched, maybe we've never found out the source of them. Where do these things come from? Why are they taught the way they are? Why is there Christianity, and why is there Islam? Why is there Buddhism? Why is there Hinduism? Why are there so many approaches if there's just one God? And it's a very important question for us to ask. Probably all of us have gone through that in one way or another. We've accepted a lot of the things we've been taught. We probably have rejected some things we've been taught. But that's what we're interested in doing. The homecoming is finding our own spiritual source. And for some people, the motivation to do good is often driven by fear of the consequences for doing otherwise. For centuries, the church has used the fires of hell as a means of keeping their flocks on the straight and narrow. On our journey home, the time comes when we take a deeper look at the ideas we've been handed. And I've talked to a number of people who have been threatened with the fires of hell because they diverted from the religion they were raised in. And that, to me, is a very interesting thing. I have no fear at all of burning in hell. I do not embrace a God that would allow that to happen. I gave that up a long time ago. That's the one I was taught. That's the idea that I was given, that if I didn't walk the straight and narrow, there was a good chance I would end up in hell. I was thinking about how readily we accept this idea. There was a song, I think back in the early 60s, 70s, about a girl that was killed in a car crash, and the guy singing about her oh, where can my baby be? The Lord has taken her away from me. She's gone to heaven, so I've got to be good, so I can see my baby when I leave this world. And that kind of summarizes, that was a hit song. It kind of summarizes this attitude that we've been given. The Lord took her away from me, so I've got to be good, so when I die, when I leave this world, I'll meet her again. So where does that come from? And it comes from our Christian heritage, our Christian background. And there are a lot of varieties of it, a lot of versions of it. But what I'm saying here, that's so much a part of our culture that a song could come out about this and nobody would question the theology of it. They would just accept it by the record, and it would become a hit because we understand it. It's something that's familiar to us. But does the Lord take us when we leave this planet? That's another thing I've heard many times. The Lord took him. If God is omnipresent, where can God take us? If we can never get out of the presence of God, how could we be taken somewhere? And if, as the Gospel of Thomas says, the kingdom of the Father is spread out upon the earth and men do not see it, where could we go where God is not? The psalmist raised that question. Wherever I am, God is. If I should make my bed in Sheol, or if I should go to the furthest parts of the sea, or wherever I go, God is. God is there. So that's an idea, and we're thinking, here we are on earth, and God is up there in heaven, up someplace in the sky, or some other dimension, someplace else. And I've got to follow a certain lifestyle. If I don't, I won't get to heaven. So that's an idea that we have to look at, and I'm not going to even challenge that. You can believe it if you want. I don't. I do not believe that any longer, that there is a heaven and a hell. That I think when we leave this body, we will find that we have an incredible experience. And the near-death research basically confirms this. Most people that have experiences, near-death experiences, can't even put into words what they went through. And most of them will say it's nothing like I was taught in church, that it is a marvelous experience. I don't necessarily base my faith on that, but I think it's a window of insight that we're given today, because science is actually exploring this question: what happens when we die? And the answers they are getting from people who have been pronounced medically dead and come back do not describe anything horrible. In fact, most of them don't want to come back. So there's that to look at. It's a bit of information that's come to us now through our technology, through our research. I say technology because there are more cases of people coming back because of our resuscitation technology. We bring more people back. It used to be that anyone who had a heart attack up to a certain point would die. There was no doubt about it. But now people are being brought back all the time, and those who have had cardiac arrest are among the most interesting focal points of the researchers. Because when a person has a cardiac arrest, their vital signs are gone. And it's monitored. They can see that there's no heartbeat, there's no brain activity. And yet this person during that time has no brain activity, no heartbeat, not breathing, is often observing the doctors frantically trying to bring them back. So how could they be conscious? And then often just moments later they'll go through a tunnel and they'll have all this incredible experience. And that's a question they're working on. How can a person be conscious when they're brain dead? It's very possible that we don't require a brain to be alive, that the soul is something beyond that, and that's one thing religion has given us. We're under no obligation to settle for depictions of God filtered through religious institutions and professionals. These only pass on ideas that have been handed to them through so many generations that they treat them as truth and probably believe them to be so. And I'm very impressed with pictures of this chapel ceiling and the great cathedrals, magnificent works of art. But what are they created for exactly? What's the purpose? Is it to show our adoration for the greatness of God? There's no indication at all that Jesus ever suggested building any temple or anything of that nature to show the greatness of God. They had the temple in Jerusalem that was burned to the ground in 70 AD by the Romans. But what it says to me now is it shows the power of the church. Here's why you better believe what we tell you. Because we are a power. We are a power on earth, and we represent God. So whose opinion is that? Where did that come from? And if you think of a Jesus wandering the countryside of his day, the Galilee, teaching the kingdom of God is within you, it doesn't come through observation. Having no building to teach in, although he did teach in synagogues, but those are very small, not big temples like we might think of. The tiny villages, they're probably tiny buildings, if a building at all. But you think of that, you think of a man traveling around teaching, this spiritual dimension is present. And then you look at the pomp and circumstance of today's religion. Where does that come from? Why? Why have we elevated it to that point? And I believe the reason is the church is saying, because we are a power. We, the church, we're a power, and we represent God. Would God agree with that? That's the question that we all have to ask. And this may all sound like kind of a ridiculous thing to think about. But when you do think about it, you will ask yourself that question. What is the church trying to say? God is powerful? We don't really need a church telling us God is powerful. Have you ever noticed the universe we live in? It's pretty cool. And it's been doing quite well for billions of years and beyond. Do we need buildings and do we need religions telling us how great God is? Or are they really saying how great they are and how much we need them? That they are a power on this earth that we need to listen to. And I think the message is coming from people. Where do cathedrals come from? They're not built by God, they're built by people. And so it is a statement. Look how powerful this organization is, because it represents God. But the universe does just fine, and if the whole thing was flattened out, destroyed, it would all start again. There has been the question, where did we come from? What am I? Clear back to primitive humans, and what happens is there are some humans that don't think they can answer that question, and so they depend on others, maybe a shaman, a priest, a minister, a professional clergy that can answer the question. What is this thing we call God? Well, here it is. I'll lay it out for you. And so that's what we call our religion. And that can be a hindrance to our spiritual journey home. And if it becomes a hindrance, then we need to sort that out ourselves. And yes, we do ask questions, we read books, we consult the professionals. But if a professional religious authority that represents some big organization is asked the question, what is God and what am I? They're going to answer according to how they're supposed to answer, according to that particular religion. Who do you say that I am? That's the real question that comes back to us. And there are many people who are not willing to ask that question. Where did all of this come from? Why do we have these certain answers? Why am I expected to believe this certain way? And it's a thing that we all come to at some point. I love what Mark Twain said. It's not what we don't know that gets us in trouble. It's what we know for sure that just ain't so. And a lot of people never question their religion. They never question the origins of it. They never question why they have accepted what they believe. I've got to be good so I can see my baby when I leave this world. There are people that believe they can make contact with his baby right now. There are no barriers in some people's ability to see beyond the physical. And I'm not much into that kind of thing, but I don't doubt it. Because I think we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg in our capacity and our ability. So everything is on the table. And again, the near-death research, people say time and time again, they meet people who have gone on. Where are these people? Some of the most interesting stories are people that meet siblings they didn't even know they had, that maybe died at birth or died before they were born. And they meet this person, and they don't know who they are, but they find out. And how would that happen? They come back and they say, I met Susie. And the parents will say, well, Susie passed away 2 years before you were born. So how does that happen? You know, there's things that happen we can't explain. And Susie's doing just fine. She never was singed by the fires of hell. But you can believe that kind of thing. It's okay. There's nobody that's going to stop you from doing that. But it's not a requirement. And one of the requirements of getting home, of the journey home, is asking yourself these questions. And Jesus kind of laid this on the table. And this is easy to let it escape, the idea behind it. Because he said, for he makes his sun rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the just and the unjust. In other words, God is not influenced by human behavior. It's like it rains or it shines, not because you're good or bad. The kind of experience you have is determined by whether you're good or bad, whether you behave or not. The kind of life you have, you will suffer as the result of making bad choices. But God will not punish you for that. That's what he's saying. You'll still get the sun and you'll still get the rain, even if you're not behaving so well. Because God is changeless. God doesn't change. And that's something she's gone to heaven, so I've got to be good. What's that mean? If I'm bad, God is not going to let me in. My behavior will influence the way God behaves, the way God acts. So if that's true, we're dealing with a capricious God, a changeable, one that if we're not behaving correctly, we'll get angry, like a human being would get angry. But it's going to be 101 today, and we're all going to complain about it. Do you think the sun is going to stop shining or shine less because we complain about it? Or do you think because we would hope that rain would come, that it would come and cool things down? Or do we think that our behavior, our attitude is going to change the way the sun behaves or the rain behaves? That's what Jesus is saying. It's not your actions, your attitude, your behavior doesn't change the nature of God. God is steady. God is love. God is life. God is power. God is intelligence. But God is not angry. God is not sorry that God made you or disappointed that you've made that mistake. You may be, and you may punish yourself for that. And maybe there is some behavior that if you change it, it'll make your life better. But what you will find is just like the prodigal son goes out in the far country and does all the bad things, comes back, finds a father that has not changed his mind, still loves him, greets him with open arms. That's a consistent God. Jesus is depicting God that does not change. So there's that kind of thing that we have to sort out, and we got a lot of it from our religion, because the religion says if you don't walk the straight and narrow, you could be in trouble. Could be some problems. And they're the kinds of problems that'll last forever. So where does that come from? Does it come from God or does it come from the church? And that's what we sort out. I have absolutely no fear of going to hell for anything I've ever done. And I'm not proud of everything I've ever done. But I totally embrace this idea that God is changeless, that I can make my life very miserable. I've done that. I know how to do it. It doesn't take a lot of practice. But who suffers as the result of that? That's choices I make. It's not punishment from God. It's punishment from my own mistakes, from my own choices. And I think when we grasp that we're not being condemned from on high, we're being condemned by our own actions, then we're more likely to say, well, if I'm condemned by my own actions, maybe I can change my actions. Maybe I can make some new choices. And what we find is the sustaining life of God, the guidance of God, the power of God is right there when we change our mind. And that is exactly what the word repent means. Change your mind. Change your direction. Prodigal son went out to far country, turned around, changed his mind, came home. Same road, different direction. It's a pretty important concept because we think something's got to change in this universe. And we're living often by somebody else's rules without really giving a second thought as to where those rules may have come from. The rules have to come from our understanding of the nature of God. And that has to be a first-hand experience. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul. And you'll naturally love your neighbor as yourself. It's an effect. So it's all about coming home to our spiritual center. Our understanding and attitude toward God change many times, but God is changeless. I made that point already. The purpose of meditation is to sensitize the mind to the point where we can observe and experience the subtle presence of God as the living energy from which our being rises. And that may sound like a bunch of gibberish. But as you become still, as you go within yourself, as Jesus said, go into your inner room and shut the door and pray to your Father who's in secret. What is that? What's that mean? Does it mean you go to some place inside your house and close the door and God's there? He's not talking about rooms and houses. He's talking about you, your inner sanctuary. Take time to sit down and be still and listen to that inner presence that has been guiding you from day one, never has stopped. We become so confused by outer distractions that we forget this presence is here. And our mind becomes frantic, and we live in that frantic world, and we pray to a God up in the sky someplace to try to come and fix that. But Jesus spoke to the wind and the waves, "Peace, be still," and they were still. So why didn't the disciples who were in the same boat do the same thing? Because they were looking at the wind and the waves. Jesus looked at something beyond that. He did not respond to classical training. And I think the wind and the waves that he actually calmed were the disciples, the emotions of the disciples. They saw how calm he was. You're having no problem, so I guess maybe we'll be okay. He was a steadfast person of faith, absolute faith. What you are looking for is what is looking. This comes from St. Francis of Assisi. This is the coming home. What you are looking for is what is looking. I've always liked that. And that's really what we're looking for. It's our God self. We're created in the image and after the likeness of God. Do we believe that? And what does that mean? How can we say that in one breath and turn around and say that we're born in sin in the next? That we're something less than the image likeness of God. The personality, the outer self that we have created is less than the image and likeness of God, but that's not who we are. That's why we are to go within, find that place of stillness, find that inner self, that image and likeness of God that we are at the deepest level. We find that. What we're looking for is what is looking. That's the image likeness of God that we are. And so we touch that in our times of quiet, and we become empowered in a very quiet way. And we begin to understand that God is not vengeful. God's not something that changes as a human being would change. If we could offend somebody and they used to like us and they no longer do, that can never be said of God any more than go outside at 100-degree weather and curse the sun. It won't change. It doesn't change. Or if you've got a picnic scheduled and it starts to rain and you curse the rain's not going to change. Never changes. To love the Lord your God is to seek direct revelation from within the inner room of your own being. It is up to each one of us to separate truth from fiction, to come to know our own indwelling Lord as the advocate and comforter that is with us always. That's the most important question we can ask, because the answer to it, what I believe, affects every aspect of our life, impacts every aspect of our life. So I'm just raising the question for us to look at this week. All right? Thank you for coming out. Next week we'll pick up another subject from The Complete Soul.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Behind the veil, then it flew above the clouds, then it blocked me from the sun, and a smile came from. And then I lay my head, I lay my head, I lay my head quietly, joyfully, gratefully. And I shall be, 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 I shall be forever free, forever free, forever, forever, forever I shall be free. I dove into the ocean, I started swimming across the sea. I held my heart wide open, let my joy carry me. And I shouted out to my brothers, jump in, the water's fine. And I shouted out to my sisters, let go, you know it's time. And you can swim real slow, you can swim real slow, you can swim real slow as you please, joyfully, gratefully. And you shall be, 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 you shall be forever free, forever free, forever, forever, forever you shall be free. And we'll sing our song so strong it fills the canyons. We'll lift our hearts, love is our companion. And we shall be, 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 we shall be forever free, forever free, forever, forever, forever we shall be free, forever, forever we shall be free.
You've been watching a talk given by Reverend Doug Bottorff here at Independent Unity in beautiful Grand Junction, Colorado. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. It really helps us spread our message. If you would like to support us, you can do so by clicking the button in the right-hand corner of the video screen. We greatly appreciate your support. Thanks again for watching.